Hello and welcome to today's episode of Velocity Kinetics. I want to discuss something today that I've tried to record a few times and video tends to go a little sideways, as in off topic. I mean, I know a lot of my videos do go off topic, but I don't mind having a rant, as a lot of these videos seem to be. They seem to just disintegrate into nothing but a rant, but I want to talk about the rising cost of cars and what the hell are we supposed to do about it. Now, I have mentioned in a video recently, sorry, I think my video is lagging now. I mentioned in a Swace cast recently about the price of cars, and I was talking about the price of, I believe it was what would have been new to me Swace, but an XDEM one from the dealership, and then the cost of an Audi as well, and what that might entail for me. I tried recording this video once before, as I mentioned in the introduction. Actually, I think I've tried to do it twice, and it just doesn't seem to get anywhere. But a lot of cars these days are not value for money, and the price of them has crept up and up and up. And I appreciate, people say, well, it's inflation or it's Brexit or what have you, and it's like, okay, fine, there are external factors influencing the price of cars, whether you're talking new, used, there are external factors at play here. But for me, the issue I'm just simply talking about the cost, nothing more. Pounds and pence. What gets me concerned is they've gone up by more than the rate of inflation. Used cars have become, rather than cheap runarounds, nearly as expensive as new ones. So on the used front, again, I might have mentioned this in the Swacecast video. I'd have to re-watch the relevant video to be completely sure what I went on about. But I recently went to Suzuki with my brother to look at a used car because we're trying to see how expensive it would be for him to get some wheels so he doesn't have to keep taking the train to work, and then in turn try and give him a little bit better work-life balance, give him some flexibility to go places without having to rely on a train for getting back. And Suzuki is always a good place to start, in my opinion. Cheap, reliable, honest, usually pretty economical, and fun to drive. So, a long time, well, not that long ago actually, we looked at a Baleno for him, and that was about $9,000, which was quite infuriating because I saw a picture in my Velocity Kinetics history of a new one that was selling for 10 way back then. So it's like, hang on, this is an 18 plate that's so close to price what I paid for my 18 plate, well 68 plate, but 2018 year Baleno, and quite close in cost as well to the 17 plate, the March 2017 model I had. But we found the cheapest car we could find was a Suzuki Swift, but we're not talking about the current ones with the hybrid. We're not talking about the ones before that with the turbo. We're talking about the ones before that. So nearly 2 engine iterations ago, when they were still naturally aspirated. We're talking about the one I had, the SZ2 one I had, which was the one I bought was a 65 plate. These ones were even older. Not by much, at least by terms of the number plate. It was a 15 plate. And granted, it did have a couple of extras on it over what I had. My one didn't even have air conditioning. This one had air conditioning, it had Bluetooth, it had a reversing camera. But they wanted, for this used Swift, and I suppose the only other plus point is it had 30,000 miles on it, and that was it. But okay, fine. But they wanted 10,500 fucking pounds for it. It's like, what? Are you having an absolute laugh? And if you consider it in terms of how much it would cost to step up, my dad's considering getting rid of his Cougar, and his Cougar is a 69 plate model. Hasn't even got, was it 68? 69, I think it is. It hasn't even got 10,000 miles on the clock. 10,000 miles. And it's a Vignale spec. He can only get at the moment £15,000. But I shit you not, if he sold that to We Buy Any Car, if he sold to any Ford dealer, traded any dealer he went to trade it in for, assuming they all gave him £15,000, that will be on the forecourt again the next day for the thick end of 23, if not more. And they'll say, well, it's the best we can do, it's the best we can do. No. It'll be up there for so much. And it's just, back on the Suzuki example, it's like, that was more, that was nearly £2,000 more than I paid for my first Swift. It's absolutely batshit, in my opinion. It's mental how much they're costing. And when I've been looking with Sarah to try and see how much a car for her would cost, the cost is that much that I'd rather, if I'm going to be spending out a lot of money, I'd rather find something new or nearly new for her. So we were looking at some Ford Focuses, because she's now learning in a Ford Focus, and she likes how it is to drive. And, you know, whether you like Ford or not, you can't deny that they're good. They're easy to drive, decent drivers, pretty economical. For the most part, just about every single one is pretty good value for money. But the issue we ran into... Oh, who's that down there? Got a cat down here, little Izzy. Come on. She's doing the happy stamps at the moment. But every single one we've looked at least online, we're talking cars that have got a 14 or 13 plate on them, and you're looking £7,000-8,000. Now again, I could understand them if they're all the ZTEC Sports or the Gia. I can't remember what the spec levels are, but if it was the top level one before the Vignale exists, if it was one of those, that might be okay. And if it was lower mileage, so we're talking 40,000-50,000 miles, that might be okay. And if we're talking the big, in terms of the turbo models at least, if you're talking the 125 PS Focus, again, okay, maybe. But we're talking things like the 1.5 diesels, we're talking cars with 80-90 plus thousand miles on, which, depending on how well they've been maintained, you might be heading into nothing but pain with timing belts, gearbox services, clutches, tyres, you name it, and as well as the associated failures on cars of that age. This is not Ford's. I'm talking about here, just cars in general. The associated failures and MOTs, particularly to do with rust, subframes potentially, depending on the manufacturer, and that's not a cheap fix. And again, if the car's not been looked after, then you might have all sorts of rust problems. If you're buying private, if you're buying from a dealer, then they might have taken some better care of it, or at least, you know, tried a bit better. But what's also got my goat with the price of new cars as well, two examples, and one example I was using in a previous attempt at this video. I'd seen an advert for Suzuki Swift, the newest one. They were wanting to charge for a Swift £21,000 for a Swift. And this is on the Suzuki UK Facebook page this advert was on. So if you trolled through, you could probably find the comment from me where I'd say thanks but no thanks to it. The price I wanted for a Swift, now granted I believe it was the SZ5 or whatever the new term is for what was an SZ5. I could have even understood it if it was the Swift Sport, because, you know, it's got the Sport badge on it. It will command more money because of that. It wasn't a Sport, it was just an SZ5. And I believe that was even, that didn't even include things like the metallic paint into the equation. It was just a stock red. And considering in 2021, I paid 24. No, I didn't. I paid 22 all in with the paint I selected. I paid 22 for my Swace. And the Swift has always been a cheap starting model. It should always be a cheap car. The Swift, my sister got one of the first, in Middlesbrough at least, it was the first one they sold with the turbocharged engine. And that was about 10 grand, 11 grand back then. And that's about the right price point for that car. I don't give a toss about the battery technology. You're still recording insane profits, even though you've done all the research on whatever hybrid battery booster solution that you're implementing, or whoever you've purchased the hybrid technology from. You're still recording a huge profit. The car that's really irritated me and reignited my fury on this matter, or at least made me want to have another attempt at this video. I saw an advert for John Banks. It was John Banks Honda. John Banks is the same chain I bought my Swift from. I think they're pretty good chain, but obviously each their own, and experiences and so on. It was for the same Honda dealership that my Suzuki places shares the forecourt with and shares the building with. Before you ask how do I know it shares the building, I had a job interview there a couple of years ago, and we went in the Suzuki side and then went into the Honda side all through the back. The advert for the Honda Civic, I'm not going to get into the other Hondas they had on there. The Honda Civic was listed as a £40,000 car. Not a Type R, not anything like that. The Honda fucking Civic. And I get the new Civic, don't get me wrong, when I've seen them around, they look quite nice. I wouldn't say no to test driving one, and if from what I've seen, I wouldn't say no to having one on my driveway. But £40,000, that better have warranties galore. That better be the last thing left running when the sun goes supernova and the planet is eaten alive. There should just be a bunch of Hondas left floating around in space after that, or whatever is left after the supernova. I cannot wrap my head around it. And it sort of feeds into the conversation I had in the last Swace cast I did. Where I've talked about how the Swace I want is just not, well, the Swace I was tempted by is just not feasible at the moment. And it really isn't feasible. Even though the 400-mile 73 plate one is an extremely good value for money. The amount they want for it per month is just too much. And what annoys me more is the price they're asking for it is all it should have cost in the first place. And I know a lot of people go, well, that's just your perception. That's not how business works. It's a case of, well, trying to think who the hell it was. There was a sociologist I remember. I want to say they've got a Japanese name. I want to say something like Fukuyama, but I'm sure that was a completely different concept. But they talked about the nature of toxic profit. I remember reading the article when I was at uni. And basically within this article, it was quite a new piece at the time. But they basically talked about how, yes, it's fine for businesses to keep making profit. And it's fine for businesses to find new ways of making profit. But profit is not always possible. Sometimes you make a loss. Profit doesn't always have to be record profits. They cited an example at the time, which was, I believe they cited British Gas within it, or at least if it wasn't British Gas, it was a similar sized energy company. And they cited the example of record profits every year. So it's a case of, well, how did we make the profits go up? We put the prices up. Oh, okay, shall we put the prices up then? Again? Okay, next year. We made record profits again, not sure how we did it. How did we do it last year? We'll put the prices up. Okay, so should we put the prices up again? It's like a Larry and Paul sketch, or Armstrong and Miller, two Ronnies, you name it. It's that sort of Foil Arms and Hog, even. In fact, Foil Arms and Hog, that's, I think, have done... No, it wasn't. Larry and Paul have done something very similar. Talking about wholesale gas prices. But it seems almost like a bloody comedy sketch. But the profit is not the be-all and end-all. Yes, it keeps the showrooms open. Yes, it keeps the companies in business so they can develop research, because a lot of money will be poured back into research. Yes, it's got to pay everyone up and down the company, depending on how they've registered and done the division of the company and so on. And then this article also cited that shareholders have gone from understandably being investors and making money, losing money, to have to make money all the time. And personally, it feels very... The article resonated within me, and whilst I'd always thought myself as a centre person politically, it sort of that began to sort of awaken my mind, at least, the ideas of the left wing. But anyway, enough about that. But then when you start looking around and moving away from the Japanese ones, when you start looking around at other car manufacturers and what they have on offer, actually suddenly it's a case of half these brands and half these models that used to be affordable alternatives to each other. So if you could have gone and looked at a Mercedes and gone, no, I'm going to go look at the BMW, and then go for that. I might go look at the Audi actually, or I might go look at the Volkswagen, just using the Germans as the example. You could then look at that and go, that doesn't work, I'm going to go look at the Swedes, I'm going to look at a Volvo now instead. And you would find decent, similar prices, but at least they'd be sort of relatively attainable in relation to the income that you are earning. I can't fathom out how we've gotten to the position we are with the car market. Because whether you buy used, new, nearly new shit boxes that just you replace as soon as they go bang, everything has gone up so much, and not just the cars themselves, the parts, the tyres, the servicing, everything has gone up. Stupidly so. But cars that I would have always thought were quite attainable for me, especially with the salary I now earn, which in terms of the grand scheme of salaries, no, it's not very big, but compared to the salary I was earning in November 2022, my salary is alarmingly close to doubled with the job I now have. And I don't know how I'd be at the moment. I can't even work out how the hell I'm going to afford a new car should I want a new car. It's hard enough trying to work out how I'm going to afford to pay the balloon payment, as in how I'm going to finance it if I decide to go down that route. My brain is scrambled over it, and it's not a little scrambled, it is quite mahusively scrambled. I don't know what to do. So, for example, cars I would have always assumed were, I'm not going to put them on a complete, or at least I'm going to, not intending to put them on a complete spectrum, but cars that I would say were on the nice end of average or average, you know, that were relatively affordable for most. You had things like the Ford Mondeo, you had the Volvo S40, S60, you had the Saab 9.3 when it was around, and should add that caveat of when it was around for the Mondeo, Ford Focus, Subaru Impreza, the Levorg. You got various Alfa Romeo saloons, which I believe now is just a Giulia, but back in the day it was the 159. Skoda Octavia, Skoda Superb, Volkswagen Jetta. We don't get it over here anymore, but back in the day we used to get it. And the Passat, obviously classic BMW 3 Series, Mercedes C-Class, Audi A4, and the A3. Just to name a few, actually, and we'll go in Rule Britannia, the Jaguar was the X-Type back in the day, but then the early XF models. Now, the Jag is probably the worst example in there, as it's probably the least affordable of the lot. But people on more average incomes seem more able to get one. Or the worst example I have, as worst example is in where it's like, where you sit there standing going, what the fuck? The most. Sarah and I looked at a Land Rover. I've told this story quite a few times. And actually, but you'd have to go to the An Interesting Surprise video from a few months ago, actually probably a year ago now, where we went to Land Rover. I sat in the Discovery Sport and kind of fell in love with the Discovery Sport. Not sure if I'm ever going to be able to afford one though. And at the time, they were about £35,000 starting. So even on my current wage, realistically, just not doable, I think. Or at least, if you're going to term it in terms of black and white, it's a black, not going to happen. If you were allowed to add some grey in there, yeah, it would be kind of a grayscale. Somewhere in that grayscale, if those prices stayed where they were, and my wages had gone up to where they are. But when we had another look, we were beginning to think, you know what, actually it might be time to potentially say farewell to Patrick Swayze, because the holiday we went on, he just struggled. He struggled quite a lot. And they've gone up to 50 grand. As he says it all. It's ridiculous, really. Just mental. So continuing on our conversation about car prices. It's a new day, several days later, chilling with the cat, new recliner sofa, life is okay, I guess. Although my phone case is problematic. It's fallen to pieces, but I think I'm getting a new phone, so it's a game of chicken. And that video fell foul of a game of stupid. Now don't get me wrong, in this first part of the video I have probably unfairly unloaded at Honda, because it's up to Honda to choose where they put their price points. It's up to them if they want to move the Civic up the range, but surely it would be better to bring back the Accord and have a bigger brand, because when I was telling my mum about how much a Civic would be now, she was like, they're only little pokey things, and she was thinking of the age-old Civics, the ones that were quite small, sort of the ones when they were still sort of a bit between Polo and Golf in size. It's insane how much they're costing. And then when you look everywhere else, I was thinking about this the other day whilst I was stuck in a Teams meeting. One I'd been told I had to attend, but during the meeting I had no idea why I was supposed to be there. No one spoke to me. It was not even something I didn't even need to take any minutes for it, and I've not been asked about what happened in that meeting. There's been nothing, so what the hell? I allowed my mind to wander. So sue me. Don't sue me, actually, because I could get fired. Don't fire me. We're under a lot of restructuring at the moment, but there we are. But it was something that's happened years ago as well. Cars sort of creeping up in price. Like, I've used the example quite a few times before. The Volvo V40, not the original one that was launched in '98, that was the estate cousin to the S40. The more recent one that's a hatchback. When that launched, I could nearly afford one as my first car. I nearly had one as my first car. Granted, it would have been on a lease, but I could nearly have afforded one. And they were about £14,000, which was still a lot of money. Doesn't matter inflation adjusted or not, that was a lot of money. But then, by the time they went off sale, they'd crept all the way into the mid-20s in price. S60s used to start at 16,000, 17,000. They were in the high 20s, early 30s starting. V70s were always mid-20s. Then they became mid-30s, or granted when they became the V90, they became even more. That's just Volvo. And the S40 crept up in price as well before it disappeared, as did the V50. It's astounding. As reluctant as my left-leaning political ideology and economic thoughts are, yes, ultimately the harsh reality is all these companies are businesses. They've got shareholders they need to answer to, although, as I've mentioned in the nature of toxic profit, sharing their shareholders, being a shareholder does not guarantee you money. Shareholders should be, yes, you participate in the profits when there's profits, but when there's a loss, they come to you to get funds. That's how it always used to be. You've got brands moving the goalposts on their car pricing so much. Like, I was looking at a Renault Clio with my brother the other day, and the price of it was just ridiculous. What they were looking for, and it wasn't a top-end Clio. It wasn't like it was an RS Sport or anything like that. The car market's gotten out of hand at the moment, and I watch quite a bit of Auto Alex videos these days, because like him or hate him, he does talk a lot of sense, as does Taylor Hetherington. I think he's TaylorMade Cars, if I remember what he was on his jumper. I should remember, because I've just finished watching one of the videos, the V70R video. They've even commented on how mad things have been. But then when you hear about how much he's paid for, when they've paid for certain vehicles and how much they're willing to get or pay for other things that they're using, it begs belief. It's like, hang on, whoa, I wouldn't have paid that much for that. But if that's what the trade price is, and that's trade rates or good prices, good rates, then of course it's going to be quite expensive. It astounds me that, I suppose, if you're going to sort of look at the bigger picture, so not just cars, but look at the cost of life at the moment, and I'm not factoring in whether you've got children into this equation. Rent is at an all-time high. Mortgage interest rates are the highest they've been for quite a significant period of time. Not the highest they've ever been, by a long stretch, but higher than what they have been, and in turn, as a ratio of the house cost, they actually are at their highest. Food costs at the most they've ever been. Gas and electric at record prices. Water, record prices. Council tax going one way and one way only. people's general income is going down. Petrol prices keep going, rocket rise and feather fall, if they fall at all. So, never mind whether you've then got to factor in things like children and child costs into that, childcare costs, whether you're fortunate enough to have pets, because vet bills are going up, never mind health costs like paying for your prescriptions or the dentist, if you're even able to get an NHS dentist. And then suddenly all your car costs are going up, car tax is going up, and now you're telling me the cost of a car, whether you're going new, used, XDem, shitbox, you name it, that's going that way and that way only. What the hell are you supposed to do? What the hell is anyone supposed to do? And as I've mentioned in the episode 131, I'd love to lay all this at the doors of Brexit or Trussonomics, or was it Truss Economics, whatever the word is that they used to describe it. That seems to have kickstarted a lot of this batshit craziness that we find ourselves in. But it's not just that. I really want to blame it on all that. Trust me, I do. But there is something else at work here. And I think the long and the short of it is new cars are more expensive to get into the UK at the moment, and they've got higher development costs now for going hybrid, so things are a little bit more expensive to build than they were. So naturally, to keep their price-cost ratio the same, they've put the price of the car up, which in turn means it's that little bit out of league for everyone in general. But because interest rates have gone up, if you're talking regardless whether you're talking car finance or a personal loan, they've gone up, so it's not quite as affordable as it once was. So not long ago, and before you go, oh, what the hell are you talking about? Let me put it this way. About 18 months ago, before interest rates started going squiffy, I seriously considered refinancing my loan that I used. As I mentioned, it paid part of the deposit on the Swace, but it also tidied up some other bits of finance that needed tidying up. Not that long ago, I could have taken out a loan for £30,000, been paying more or less the same as what I'm paying now between the loan and my car cost. But then the car would have been mine. Granted, I'd be a year and a half into quite a significant loan, but nonetheless, the car would be mine. Or was I looking at replacing it at that point? No, I'm pretty sure I was definitely buying it. I can't remember. The 30,000 was to then look at to have some money spare to buy a used car for Sarah. I remember exactly what we were doing now. It was so I could have had nearly 2 cars. 2, granted, one could have been, if I wasn't savvy or wasn't careful, it could have been the bane of my existence. But 2 hypothetical cars for the cost of 1. The spiralling cost is just insane. And yet then along with this drive to go green, whether you're talking hybrid or electric or hydrogen or whatever else someone else comes up with as a new way to do it, make it make sense. You know, you want me to buy a hybrid, I'll buy a hybrid. I've considered a Suzuki A-Cross because Sarah wants something SUV-ish or at least lifted. But £33,000 for one that's got, what was the price? It was John Banks in Ipswich had one for £33,000. It was quite low mileage, I guess, for a year old. It only had 10,000 on, or about average mileage. But they wanted 33 grand. Now, bearing in mind, they were 36 new not that long ago. But make it make sense. And yet, on my car, if I were to trade it in, I'm just losing money left, right and centre. I don't know what to think anymore. Well, I'd been out to try and record an end to this video, and it didn't work. Well, the recording did work, it's just terrible wind noise because storms. But I suppose there's no easy way to answer what's to do with the cost of cars and why it's happening. Because as I mentioned, we can lay it on all sorts of political reasons, we could lay it on profit, we could even bring in age, generational warfare into it, as in it's a boomer thing versus millennial versus Gen X and so on and so forth. But the industry needs to sort itself out, because otherwise all this profit that they like to make, well, it's wrong to say like to make as if it's a choice, they need to make it to stay in business. But the profits that they're used to, shall we say, the profits that they're used to just won't happen. They won't shift the vehicles in the quantities that they've been used to. They won't shift the used in the quantities. You won't be able to get the shitboxes gone in the quantities either. Although that said, it might mean the shitboxes start coming back to shitbox price. The move to electrification hasn't helped because of all the extra R&D involved in going electric, but that's also not the single reason either. And whilst this video's gone off on a bit of a rant and things, it's just not right. Let's put it that way. It's just not right. If interest rates start coming back down again, then perhaps we might see things stabilise out and prices start to come back down and become more attainable and achievable. But realistically, no idea when that's going to happen, if it'll happen at all. But there we are. Anyway, I'll finish that video off here because I need to go grab that door before it bangs again. Although trying to let one of the cats out for a bit. Izzy did go out briefly and she's just walked back in. But still, look after yourselves, drive safe, donate to paypal.me/velocitykinetics to donate on a one-time basis. Or, if you feel like buying me a cup of coffee, go to buymeacupofcoffee.com/customer services expert, because that's a handle of another blog I do sometimes write. But drive safe, look after yourselves, we'll see you next time.